Welcome to Behavioral Health in the New Normal, a podcast developed by Prestige Community Resources, aimed at bringing healing back to our community through knowledge, expert advice, and positive messaging. The show is a joint venture between the Department of Behavioral Health and Prestige Community Resources, funded by SAMHSA in response to the challenges currently impacting our communities. Hosted by Paul Wells Sr., who uses over 30 years of extensive clinical social work experience to conduct insightful interviews with experts and professionals on a wide range of topics that impact the Washington, D.C. community. From behavioral health crisis to education to financial hardship and anything in between. This show will provide information and insights that will surely make a difference in your life.
Prestige family, I am so excited to introduce you to Tony Swaggerty of Swaggerty Realty Group. And he's going to talk to us about the housing business specific to the pandemic. Brother Tony, also fondly known as Tony T or T Swag, is going to introduce us to what the experience has been most recently related to the pandemic. Tony has over 30 years of experience working in this field, over 10 years as a mortgage broker, and over 7 years selling new homes. And so I think he clearly would be deemed an expert and deserves the respect accordingly. And so Tony, welcome to the show. And I just want to remind everyone, this is a collaboration between Prestige, SAMHSA, and the Department of Behavioral Health here in Washington, D.C. So Tony Swag, we're glad to have you. How are you, sir?
I'm good yourself, Brother Paul. I'm glad to be here this morning to participate, okay. Yes.
Yes, we hope to get some information out to the mass about what they can expect if they are looking for real estate and looking for purchase. But before we go to the nuts and bolts, Brother Tony, can you just tell us about who you are personally, where you grew up, how you grew up, and how you got into the real estate business?
Hey, that's a very good question, Paul. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I was born in Tennessee, as a matter of fact, and as a kid, when I was 12 years old, my parents, we migrated to St. Louis, Missouri, which I'll never forget. That was culture shock for me, moving from Tennessee to Missouri.
Yeah,
man. Anyway, and then from there, I went to California. So I spent many, many years in California, years in Nevada. So I've been, you can say from the south to the west coast. Mm-hmm. So I've been in real estate for 30 plus years. And what happened was I got into real estate when I lived in California, by the way. And it was just on a whim because I was working at a job that was actually going to close down. And so I was actually going to seek a new career. And I said, well, I'll try real estate. And once I tried it, I fell in love with it. And here I am 30 plus years later, lots of gray hair, but still doing the business.
Yeah. And still obviously passionate and committed to the work.
What
was it about your early interest that kind of drew you in? What was kind of glaring and stood out that said, well, maybe I want to try this?
Well, you know what it was, Paul, I'll tell you what it was. It was actually my first home buying experience that attracted me to the business. I mean, when I sat down, my wife and I sat down with the sales agent, and then later, after sitting with the sales agent, we met with the lender. Mm-hmm. And once they walked us through the process, I said, well, this is something I actually could do one day if I choose to do so, and not knowing that I would ever do it at that time. Yeah. And then so be it a couple of years later after we purchased a home and my current job was going to go away, then I said, well, let me give this real estate a try. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And as I mentioned, that's been quite a few years ago.
I appreciate that experience. I know for first-time home buyers, the experience can be somewhat overwhelming and daunting. Yeah. And if you don't have a roadmap and anyone who preceded you who can guide you and counsel you on the steps, you really do need a coach, a good agent, yes, to help you navigate all of the unexpected barriers that are inherent in the process. And so we'll talk about, I'm sure that you have some counseling skill as well, because you give guidance and direction, I'm sure, to new home buyers. So you mentioned your wife, you're married, huh?
Yes, I'm actually married to my second wife right now. Okay. I've been married to her for going on 10 years. My first wife, I was married to for 27 plus years. Oh. And, she unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, but it was her time. She went to paradise one day as we were taking a nap together. And so that was the biggest shock of my life to this day. But since then, I've been blessed, handpicked, and haven't sent another wife.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate you sharing that. And we talk a lot on these segments about grief and loss and the associated trauma. And I imagine having such a remarkable, unexpected loss as you did had a tremendous impact on your view, on your perception, on your emotions.
Yes.
And so maybe if you give me an opportunity, we can come back to that and just talk about how you were able to still maintain your professional identity while grieving
Yes.
such a remarkable loss. And so we'll come back to that if you would allow me to.
Sure.
And so what kind of training or work experience was required to make you the most proficient as a real estate broker, agent?
Well, you talk about training, where you start as a real estate agent, you actually go to school, you test, you get a license, but where you learn the business is actually doing the business. You have to team up with someone that's actually going to teach you the nuts and bolts of the business in terms of how to write contracts, negotiate transactions, and just teaching you all aspects of the business. So that's where you really learn, is in the trenches, should I say. Not in the school, not in the classroom, but actually doing the business.
Absolutely. At what point did you recognize with boldness that you had enough expertise, skill, and knowledge to, really claim the profession, but to move on and even open up your own company? When did I'm saying, I can do this?
Yes. Yeah, well, I recognized that kind of early on, but I chose not to go off on my own. I just wanted to work with other companies and see how things were done. So after, gathering all that knowledge throughout the years, I decided then it was time for me to go out on my own and do my own thing and put my own group together. So I think anybody can do that, with just after you gain some experience, if that's your desire, And so anyway, that's kind of how that evolved, should I say, experience and then taking the leap to go out there and do it.
Absolutely. I know when I first began to practice as a psychotherapist, it took me a considerable amount of time to even consider myself and use the title psychotherapist. But once I realized that I had the competence and the skill set, I then operated in that and affirmed it for myself. And I stayed true to it for 30 years. And in spite of all of the clinical experiences I've had, I still learn something every day.
Same here, Paul.
Every day. Is that the same true for you?
Absolutely, no question. Our industry is constantly evolving and changing. So it's very important that we keep up with what's going on.
Yes.
And from when I started, technology has virtually taken over our business at this point. I mean, if you're not tech savvy, it's going to be a little bit tough for you nowadays. Yeah. Or should I say, now I have teammates on the side of me that are very tech savvy.
That's right. That's right. And matter of fact, I'm sure that's one of the things you assess when you bring new members onto your team, how proficient they are with technology. At least I do with my practice. Yeah, about a year ago, I wasn't providing any telehealth therapy. Didn't know about Zoom, right?
Yes.
And so moving to a telehealth platform as a therapist required there was a learning curve there. And not just the adjustment I had to make to the telehealth platform, but just my basic expectations and awareness of how we apply the craft, right? Yes. On the screen, person's not in the chair next to you, right? And I'm sure that you're learning and discovering that you have to make those accommodations as new technology becomes available.
Yes.
Tell me about, you have children? You have any children?
Yes. Yeah. It's a blended family. I have one biological son myself who is actually now 40 years old. Can't believe that.
Oh boy.
That kid is almost as old as me.
Yeah, because you're only 41, so I don't know how that happened.
You got it. I don't know how that happened.
Yes, okay, that's a blessing.
Anyway, yes, and then there's a host of stepchildren in the family. For my first wife, there were 3 boys, and then my second wife has 2 children, which are all grown up now.
Oh yeah.
And, along the way, there's grandkids in the family and the whole bit. So it's one big happy family, should I say?
Okay. Yeah, what a blessing.
One big happy blended
family. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone in the family interested or showing some interest in going into real estate business?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my stepson Mark just joined me in the business last September. Got licensed during the pandemic, and Mark's background, he's been health and fitness for many, many years. And he says, I'm going to give this thing a try, Pops. And he joined with me, and he's been doing fantastic. I'm so proud of him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think he will take over the company at some point?
Oh, yeah, no question.
See the leadership?
Yeah, I am actually grooming him for that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Proud is probably an understated description of how you must feel.
Yeah,
I have two sons, and I definitely would hope that one of them goes into clinical practice and can take over the company. But that says something about you, and what he saw in you, I'm sure highlighted and influenced his interest, his motivation to pursue you. So I congratulate you on leadership as a father.
Well, thank you, Paul.
And modeling behavior. So let's talk about this. So, I mentioned that before the pandemic, clients were coming in to see me in my office. We were doing individual therapy, group therapy, psychological assessments, the full arsenal of clinical work. The pandemic hit, and I had to shut the clinic down.
Yes.
Shut the doors.
Yes.
And the entire clinical team now had to work from home office or remotely. And the infrastructure, our workflows, everything had to adjust to this new reality.
Yes.
And it took time to make those transitions. There were some moments where I didn't have as much faith as I wanted to about how we were going to survive this. So can you describe pre-pandemic, your work under that scope, and what changed when you realized the pandemic had a hold of us?
Yes, yeah. Let me touch on that a bit, Paul. And similar to what happened to you, we actually before the pandemic, I mean, we were a bustling office, with people flowing in and out every day. And of course, once we were shut down, we actually closed the office to the public, obviously. And then that's when the remote process started to work. And what happened, just so you guys will know, during the first couple of months of the pandemic, we actually lost a lot of business.
Yep.
People were just canceling transactions and just pulling away from the table because of the uncertainty and such. And then as you mentioned, we began to work from our homes, et cetera, and started to use a Zoom platform. So it was just one big, huge change that took place, and it was almost sudden in a way.
Absolutely.
What had to take place. So anyway, I mean, I can go further with that, but that's pretty much what happened in that sense. Is that we had to shut down, and start to work remotely.
Yeah.
And
so the suddenness of it is what created and continues to create a lot of anxiety, not just for business owners, but just to the general population. The suddenness of it, how we all had to abruptly accommodate this pandemic and change our behaviors, from school teachers to mothers to parents to students to therapists to business owners like yourself. And that's why initially our services decreased when the pandemic first hit, but now they've tripled in terms of the request for services because of financial ruin for some folks, and just the uncertainty of what's next, and how do I plan in the future. So many of the consumers coming in for services now are coming in with mood disorders, like depression or anxiety disorders. We're seeing a lot of anxiety disorders. And as a business owner, probably like myself, that first round, that first wave, you might have had some anxiety, but the revenue is going down. I got to lay off some staff. I got to shut this door. Yeah. Where did you find your support to get through that initial term or phase of the pandemic?
Excuse me. Actually, it was my staff and the people I work around. We were all in support of each other during that time, during that initial phase, should I say. And really, I would just want to say it's the staff and the people that I work around. We just really supported each other because we didn't know what was going to happen, how the market was going to turn, what was going to transpire. in the months to follow. And so anyway, we just band together and stay together. We stayed on Zoom calls, having our meetings, etc. And as we saw, what happened is a couple of months after the pandemic hit, most oddly, things started to pick up. And I noticed things started to pick up not only in our market, but actually across the country, things started to pick up for those that couldn't make purchases, etc., and do refinances. So to this day, as you mentioned, the pandemic hit, things went down for the worst initially, and now things are really, I want to say they're back to normal, but in many parts of the country, the real estate market is actually very, very hot.
Okay.
Yeah, people are coming back, and even though job losses have taken a toll, but for those that can purchase, it's creating a buying frenzy in many parts of the country right now.
Yeah.
Becoming a seller's market, should I say, in many parts of the country.
I wanted to, before I go on to talk about the housing market and what it looks like now, I wanted to just highlight something you mentioned about your team and the value that they bring in the teaming support that they offered. I think I would imagine some of that speaks to your leadership and how you've been deliberate about selecting the right staff in the front end, but facilitating some kind of internal process to make sure they're healthy and whole and motivated and committed to the cause. I feel your energy. I know it's telehealth. I told you I'm a therapist, so normally
yes, you did,
and I can feel it. But somehow you convey a relaxed style and posture that maybe is conducive to this teaming you described and the teaming. So tell me, and you probably maybe you don't directly supervise staff now, but what is your leadership style in your company? How would you describe that?
I'm just a hands-on individual, should I say. I always make myself available for my staff and my team members, when they have questions. So, I think what's important is that I'm there when they need me,
Okay.
question wise or whatever it may be.
Yes.
Something personal, I like to lend a hand, and I'm there to lend a hand as well. So, and they know me for that. That they can always count on me for that.
Okay.
But, I'm the one guy that they can reach out to 24/7, no matter what the situation comes.
There's a certain amount of trust owed upon you, and so a valuable commodity when you're a business owner that your staff have some trust in you and confidence in you. So again, I wanted to highlight those strengths you have in terms of your personality structure, but also just your management. Listen to this. My 20-year-old son, is taking some remote classes in college. He's working a job, fine young man. And I had a discussion with him. My thinking was, you know what? Why don't you stack your money while you're here? We'll stay here a couple years, because instead of moving from here to an apartment, I would sure love to see you move from here to some ownership, whether it's a condo or a home, your first home. I'm not sure if I want to see you all throughout your 20s renting. Why don't we jump right into home ownership? So let's start. Can you tell us about the advantages or the disadvantages of renting as compared to trying to purchase property early on in life?
Hey, that's a good question, Paul. I think, if we can steer our younger people into purchasing early on, it's going to be great for them, because renting, as we know, I like to say that's the money that you just flush down the toilet.
That's right.
So to teach our younger people early on about home ownership, I think is critically important, because I think it's a critical component of just life itself within our country is becoming a homeowner. As we like to say, that's the American dream, is home ownership. So I'm all an advocate of teaching our younger people to acquire home ownership early on in life. I remember I bought my first home in my 20s, my early 20s.
Wow.
And I like to count my first wife for that, because she said we need to buy a home. I wasn't thinking that much about it, but she says, and I wasn't in this business.
Right.
And she says, Tony, we need to buy a house. We're renting an apartment. And I just said, okay. And back in those days, quite honestly now, we're all spoiled with the low interest rates we have nowadays. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to date myself a little bit, because back in those days, we certainly had high double-digit interest. And so, but anyway, that didn't preclude us from purchasing a home. We just want to know what the monthly payment was going to be.
Right.
We wasn't concerned about the interest rate.
Right.
But anyway, I think that's really critically important that we teach our younger people to jump in and teach them about home ownership and why they should be homeowners versus renters. Number one is, hey, they're going to start to begin to build an equity base, so that they can one day maybe either keep that home for investment purposes or either sell it, cash in on the equity, and purchase another home. So, there's just no better way than home ownership, should I say. Yeah. And I'm all an advocate, as I said, of teaching our younger people about that and getting them involved and getting them, because also the other thing is, when it comes to that, younger people, many parts of the country, there are down payment assistance programs that can help them with the down payment. And I encourage them to, reach out to the local realtors and lenders in reference to that, because that's one way of getting into home ownership is if you can qualify for a down payment assistance program that can actually give you the money for the down payment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So education is very important for the new home seeker, right?
Yes.
Many of us haven't had the advantages of this information trickling down from a generational perspective. Grandparents told my parents sat me down and gave me instruction. For some generations, the first awareness and learning opportunity begins with them. And you got to get plugged in with the right group, the right professional to give you accurate, timely information. So I want to come back to that a little more.
Yes.
How do you find the right group to work with? But renting versus home ownership. What are the advantages of renting? Are there any advantages of renting that you can speak to?
Only if you have to.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the only way I see it, Paul. We do everything we can to teach the younger people to acquire home ownership, and to steer away from renting. Yes, of course, in the beginning, yes, perhaps you're going to have to, maybe you have to rent a home. This is you getting started out in life. But after that, and get settled in and you must seek home ownership. I think it's critical early on, as early as possible.
Oh, what are some of the challenges that a new homeowner would face that they wouldn't if it was a non-pandemic season? So what's unique about the application process, visiting the homes? What can a new homeowner expect now that would be different from maybe 2 years ago?
Well, number one, as I mentioned, in many parts of the country, because of the influx of people buying right now, we are actually right now experiencing multiple offer markets. In other words, it's becoming a bit more difficult to actually acquire a home because many markets are just so hot that people are lining up down the street to look at these homes and to bid on them. So, but I don't think that's not going to last forever. So that want to get into the market and can do it now, I'm just encouraging them to do so. But be prepared because, as I mentioned, in many parts of the country, in many markets, the market is just so hot that we're experiencing multiple offers. So, but don't let that be a discouragement. Get in where you can fit in and get with your local realtor, your local lenders, get yourselves pre-qualified and just get in.
Yeah. We'll talk more about pre-qualification. How has the COVID changed the way you sell houses? Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. Very good question. Actually, nowadays, because in most cases, to actually be able to show a home, there's requirements throughout the country where you can only have so many people in the home at a time, because of the COVID restrictions. So in other words, when an agent goes out to view a home, it's usually the agent and two others. In other words, a total of 3 people that can go into the home. And what we do with our listings, we have everybody go in and put booties on, and of course the house is disinfected after the person goes in and looks.
I see.
And we ask them not to touch any personal items in the home, if it's an occupied home, obviously. And so all those different protocols are in place nowadays, and those are probably going to stay in place for quite some time because we all know, we're still mask mandated in many parts of the country, and unfortunately, this pandemic has not gone away. This virus has not gone away, despite, vaccines coming on and everything else. It's still quite active.
Absolutely.
So we're still taking those precautions in terms of, protecting homeowners, protecting our clients, and so that's what we're doing essentially. It's just sharing with them what they need to do in terms of when we go out and view a home, be prepared. This is the process nowadays, and we just have to follow through with that.
Have you had any staff or clients who resisted following the protocols, just refused to mask up, or?
Well, most ironically, yes, I have. I mean, one of my colleagues called one day and said that the client, they went to go see a house, and the client told her that he could not wear a mask because of health reasons, and he didn't have a shield either. So it became a conflict with them actually going into the house. Of course, he went ahead. He went ahead eventually and did put a mask on, because we keep masks on us when we go out and show property, just in case somebody shows up and doesn't have one. But for the most part, people follow protocol. But that one instance, we did have a gentleman that actually was refusing to put a mask on.
And if he committed to that refusal, how would your team responded? Would you have denied him access to the?
Yeah, we would have had to, because it is actually, protocol that we do that, and we could be fined if we go into a property that without everybody being masked up and taking those protocols. So yes, it's very important. We would not have been able to show that gentleman at home.
Yeah, I want to hear about some innovative changes specifically that you had to implement to accommodate the pandemic and your business. For example, with Prestige, I think this is the most innovative thing I've discovered in the behavioral health field. We recognize that the consumers, many consumers couldn't transition into a telehealth format because they don't even have a phone. Definitely many of them don't have a computer, or just don't have the technical awareness to relate that way. But for those who didn't have a phone, Prestige was able to secure a grant where we supplied a cell phone for folks so they could maintain contact with us. And we could provide the therapy, med sum services, nursing, all through that technology. It's been especially helpful for those consumers, of course, who are homeless, who that might be their only connection. When you're on the street, you can't. And not just to use the phone for our service, but in case there's an emergency, to stay connected with friends, to negotiate some of the systems that they need to apply for. And so, that's mental health clinics don't give out cell phones to clients as a
yes, I heard that
protocol. After the assessment done, we determine, hey, here, have a phone so we can engage with you and provide the service. So what are some of the things you've done to accommodate this shift? Is there anything specific that you can speak to?
Zoom. Zoom,
yes.
I've done more Zoom over the last year than I've ever done in my entire life.
Yes, sir. And
because we're talking with clients that are coming from different parts of the country, and so Zoom has been a lifesaver for us connecting with people, and just actually having that. We're having that face-to-face contact, just like you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a major player in what we do. We can't be face-to-face live. I mean, touching each other. Actually, we can use this Zoom platform.
Yeah. It's been
video platform, should I say, or whatever.
Yes,
absolutely. And to connect with people. So that's been a game changer right there. I mean, we used it previously, but nothing to the extent of what we're doing nowadays. And
we're conducting all of our business almost through the telehealth Zoom platform. So we're going to pause right here. So it sounds like, Brother Tony, that in the first wave of the pandemic, things kind of shut down, everything stalled, anxiety went up, revenue went down. But now 1 year later, even though we're still in this pandemic, we're relating to it quite differently, more successfully.
Yes.
And that's based on the innovative things you've applied, the information and education we have now about the risks that are real still. Did you ever question or think about, I need to shut this business down at any point?
Oh, yes. Yes, no
Tell me
question
about
about that. That the thought came. As a matter of fact, I mentioned early on that we actually did close our office, and we
that.
were
Oh, you
closed for
did?
several months to the public.
Oh, wow.
So we had to conduct our business, via these Zoom calls and just meeting people, at properties and such. So yeah, that became an integral part of what we were doing, was just using this Zoom platform, as I mentioned, and using our telephones and working out of our home offices, basically. I mean, I still would go to the office here and there, but for the most part, we were working out of our homes.
Yeah. I can't imagine just having this contact with you. I can't even tolerate the thought that must have come over you after practicing in this field for 30 years, to say to yourself or question yourself and your team, hey, can we sustain this? I don't know about you. I don't know. There's nothing else I can do. If I don't do therapy and assessments and clinical work, what else is there to do?
Yes.
This is who I am.
Yes.
And so that must have been a very depressive kind of
No
deliberation.
Yeah, no question. The first couple of months, it was really tough on us because, as I mentioned, many people were uncertain about their futures, and we had, oh my goodness, the cancellations were just overwhelming, with people not following through with the transactions because of what had taken place. And so, yeah, it was an overwhelming situation that we had to just buckle down and handle it. And it was a wait and see situation, should I say, as well.
Yeah.
Just have to wait and see what's going to happen. And then, most ironically, as I mentioned, a couple months after, things start to turn around for us.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're grateful to your family and to your team and to the God of your understanding that you were able to weather the storm.
Yes.
Because it sounds like you're much better for it as a result. That you've learned some new principles, incorporated some new understandings and skills that you can still transfer even when we're out of this pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. No question, Paul.
Because I still see there will be still a need for telemedicine, even when the clinic opens up again 100%.
Yeah, I remember I had my teledoc appointments all during the pandemic.
Right. It sure convenient, right?
Yes.
And I'll tell you this thing, the compliance rates or attendance rates have increased tremendously because of the flexibility telemedicine offers. And so we'll probably do some percentage of telehealth service even when the clinic door is open. So we need to master the technology and become even more proficient. Listen, has the COVID-19 made it more difficult to close on houses? What's your thought on that?
No, it actually hasn't made it any more difficult to close on a home, should I say, because once we have the escrow process going and we're moving toward closing, it just goes into its natural process in terms of moving to a closing. So I don't want to say it's made it any more difficult on closing, but as I just go back to the very beginning of when it all hit, and all the uncertainty and all the cancellations that we had to succumb to, that was a difficult period. But as far as actually closing, everything's okay in that aspect.
Okay. I don't know what type of professional relationship you have with your clients and how extended those relationships are. But I imagine you sold some homes pre-pandemic, maybe a couple of months before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go into a pandemic, and some of these very families now suffer some financial duress.
Absolutely.
And right out the gate, they had this beautiful home, and they were comfortable with the terms and how you counseled them to get to the contract point. And then 3 months in, they can't pay their mortgage.
Absolutely. And boy, very good question. Not to cut you off, but that's a very good question, because we had several clients that purchased early on and they lost their jobs. Mm-hmm. I got those calls. I got a few of those calls, quite a few of those calls actually, in panic mode. And so, my answer to that was just hold on, because we just got to see how things are going to work out. They couldn't make their mortgage payment. And so when they got the information, when the forbearances started to come into play, the folks that I had talked or we had spoken to that were in that situation, they all filed for forbearance. And to this day, most of them that I know of, they're in a forbearance situation. So, and then some of them have been able to regain employment and some have not. So, and this is what's going to happen. You know, this is the part that really concerns me, because unfortunately, there's going to be a number of people that will not be able to pull out of a forbearance situation, and they ultimately will end up losing their home down the road. And that saddens me, because if they couldn't gain employment back and they can't make their mortgage payment, that process is only going to last for so long. And then they're going to have to either come up with the money to make that mortgage, get back on track, making those mortgage payments, or they're going to lose their home.
Yeah.
And that's an unfortunate thing, Bill.
Due to no fault of their own.
Due to no fault of their own. All pandemic related.
Good people, skilled people, people who plan, deliberate people who, at no, not due to their own flaw or mistaken judgment, might lose their home. Now, can you tell me a little bit about this forbearance? What does that look like when you're eligible and receive a forbearance? What does that mean?
Well, actually, what that means is that you're going to negotiate. What I want to say, negotiate. The lender's going to offer you an opportunity to take those payments that you have not been able to make, and usually they'll put those payments on the back of the mortgage. In other words, they could add that to the mortgage itself, or they could work out a payment plan where you can pay extra money towards your mortgage. So they're going to give you some options. In most cases, they're going to give you those options, and it's just a matter of you being able to follow through with what's on the table with those terms. But as I mentioned, you know, some will be able to and some won't be able to. So that's,
and because of the connection and the relationships you have with your clients, you interface with real lives, real experiences, and the direct impact that this pandemic has had on families, individuals. Similar to mental health, we hear firsthand the despair and the devastation and the anxiety and all that is the residual of this pandemic and the harm it's caused us emotionally, financially, situationally. But I'm glad to hear that they still call you for counsel and that you still make yourself available after the sale.
Oh, yes, no question.
You have no more obligations after that, right? After once the sale is done.
No, we really don't. But I've always been one of that character, make myself available to my clients. My clients have actually many of them become my friends.
Yeah, sure.
The same thing with my colleagues, you know, my teammates. You know, once we get involved in that process, you know, we seek to make our clients our friends, because you know, it creates a referral base for us as well.
Right.
You know?
You have repeat clients. You have clients that have purchased homes through you multiple times. And also clients that you know, they refer us out to other clients. I imagine you have clients who, as they reach a certain maturity, they send their children to you. Have you had that?
Oh, that's happened too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that a delightful experience?
That's happening right now, as a matter of fact.
Wow. Such a delightful experience when you've worked with the parents and have had that long-term relationship, to have an opportunity now to serve their children.
Yeah, and see the children grow up, and now the children are becoming homeowners.
Exactly. You know, you called me on a call from my youngest son. He was at the car dealer getting the car fixed, and my same service agent, I worked with him now maybe 15 years straight.
Oh, wow.
And he was just so tickled when my son drove himself to get his car, you know, serviced.
Yeah, how about that? Because he saw your kid when he was 5 years old.
Exactly. So, but I would not have sent my son to anyone else but someone who I trust and who I'm familiar with. And so with me having the confidence in my service agent, I gave him the name and said, absolutely see him.
Yes, he's the one.
He's the one. Let me ask you, how do your clients rate you? Is there kind of some rating system, some business rating system where people can go in and give you a value, or what's your rating look like?
I look for 5 stars, man.
I know that's right. Okay.
I look for 5 stars. Anything less than 5 stars, I don't want it.
Yeah, you're disappointed.
You know, because that's our focus and goals. We've been over backwards to help our people. And we make it clear up front, you know, if there's ever any questions, do not ever hesitate to ask us. You know,
Yes.
if you're unhappy with anything that's going on with the process, please let us know right away. Because don't hold anything back from us.
Yeah.
We're your best ally in this process. So we like to make that clear. And I stress that to my teammates as well. You know, make that clear with your clients that you're always available, you're upfront, and don't hold anything back from you. Because as you know, people sometimes they just won't tell you what's really going on in their mind.
Yeah.
And so they'll hold things back, and that's not the way we want it to be.
No, you want the transparency. You want
the transparency. Yes, it's a critical component of our business.
Yeah. Have you had any complaints specific to the pandemic process? So, some, you know, and you talked earlier about you have to wear a mask and put on booties when you visit the homes. But has there been any other aspect of the process where the client says, do we really have to do it this way? Is there anything you can think of?
Oh, well, yeah, you know, early on, we're seeing less of that nowadays, but early on, people were questioning, you know, just the whole process of how we were going to show the home. As I mentioned to one gentleman that refused to put the mask on, but as we, you know, my teammates, myself, even when I go out and show property, they would just question it. Man, we got to put these masks on. We got to put these booties on. We got to sanitize our hands. We got to wash our hands. So yeah, that was just a part of it, should I say? And people just getting used to that process. And you, me myself personally, you know, and you probably as well, Paul. We're washing our hands more than ever now.
Oh my goodness.
I think we got one of the cleanest worlds out there right now.
Absolutely. Oh no, we're so in touch in the medical field that I'm probably washing my hands 3 times an hour. I mean, it really is that, and you know, washing the doorknobs, and when the clinic was open, wiping down the chairs, and then we had a team coming in spraying the COVID-19 spray, and there's, you know, regulating how many clients could be in the waiting room at any given time, and oh boy, things have really changed. But it's also given us a renewed appreciation for things that we took for granted.
Yes.
Things in our process that we thought we didn't need, we actually do need.
Yes.
And so it's allowed us to reevaluate ourselves personally, but also reevaluate ourselves professionally. So for every bad thing, you can extract something good if you take time to deliberate and ponder and reconcile some of the things you've discovered. Listen to this. Are there any programs available for new home buyers who are trying to make a move during the pandemic? Any special programs specific to, you know, the pandemic era?
Well, I want to say I don't want to say there's anything actually new specific to the pandemic, but I'm telling those folks across the country to plug in with your realtor, particularly if you are going to be a first-time home buyer or what have you, and seek those down payment assistance programs.
Yeah. Because
in many cases, people are not aware of those, and those can be used. And as I mentioned, in many markets, those are available to people.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging, you know, those first-time home buyers, or you don't have to necessarily be a first-time home buyer. You could own a home, and as long as you don't in the past not own a home now, you can still possibly qualify for those programs. Yeah, so that's one way of really just helping folks and making them aware that opportunity is available for them. Just as I mentioned, I had a client yesterday, just to give you an example, and they were concerned. I told them that basically the market they're in right now, by it being a seller's market, you know, that they won't be able to probably get an offer accepted by asking the seller for closing costs. And they explained to me that their funds would be exhausted if they had to pay all of their closing costs. So I'm sending them to a lender that does down payment assistance. Because by them being a VA buyer, they don't have to actually put any money down. If you're a veteran, you don't have to put any money down. It's the greatest program in the world, by the way, for those veterans out there. Yeah. They can buy a home with no money down, but there's a closing cost factor involved there. And in many cases, they can seek down payment assistance that's available to them within their communities, and that could cover the closing costs for it. So they actually move into a home for no money,
Wow.
out of pocket.
Yeah. Some of these programs, it's federal programs, but there are also some local jurisdictional.
Some local state programs.
Okay. Okay. Do you teach or does your company provide education classes for first-time home buyers?
Yes, as a matter of fact, yeah. Actually, it's not my company, but actually what happens in most of the down payment assistance programs, it's a requirement that the participants participate in an educational process, the home buying process itself. So that's pretty much the way that works. If they get involved in a DPA program, down payment assistance program, I would probably say 90% of the time, most of those programs are going to require an educational process that they'll have to go through to be able to acquire the funds needed to participate in that program. So, yes.
We're getting near the end, so I want to draw back to some earlier content, but I probably need to ask, what's a good credit score to have if you're a first-time home buyer? Where do you need to be with your credit score? Can you tell me what's the range that makes me the best candidate for a good loan with a low interest rate?
Well, that's a very good question, Paul. You know what? A good credit score, in my mind, you can actually buy a home with a 620 credit score. And depending on the lender, they may be even go lower than that with the credit score. But just generically speaking, I'd say, be prepared to have at least a 620 FICO score to be able to qualify for a Federal Housing Authority loan, which is an FHA loan, or a Veterans Administration loan, which is a VA loan for a veteran. And if you're going for conventional financing, then I would probably say maybe 640, 660, 660 and above.
Okay.
You could qualify for as little as 3.5% down, 3% down, 5% down type loans. Because in many markets, FHA, depending upon where you are, and your lender there can tell you, what the maximum loan amount is. And then you'll know then if you can go in and qualify for that type of financing with as little as a 3.5% down payment.
Yeah.
And so it just depends, the market you're in, but I would say generically speaking, be prepared to have at least a 620 credit score, which is not very high, by the way, to be able to qualify for mortgage financing. And what they're going to look for is they're going to take all 3 credit scores and they're going to go with the middle credit score. And that would be your highest credit score.
Okay. And the credit score range is the highest is a 850, I think. What's the highest score you get? And the lowest number would be what?
Oh my goodness.
0. I guess 0.
Maybe a 350. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So we want to be around 650 and above to really qualify.
Yeah, I'll say 620 and above.
620 and above. Okay. Listen, I want to close, if you would allow me, with kind of something you shared intimately and very personally in the beginning. Midway in our discussion, you talked about how suddenly this pandemic hit us. Sudden.
Yes.
We weren't prepared for it.
No.
We didn't expect it. It shouldn't have happened.
No.
Why now? And for business owners, some of us has finally got some good momentum, right? We got some good process, good achievement. Why now do I have to kind of revert to some early experiences with developing my business, the struggle? The suddenness required some attention. Now, you shared with us that with sadness and grief, you lost your wife suddenly, unexpectedly.
Yes.
And you had to find a way somehow to reconcile that, understand that, and get back to some new normal.
Yes.
Yeah. If you would kindly, what did you apply from your loss of your first wife into the suddenness of the urgent pandemic in terms of moving on, pressing forward, not getting stuck in despair and fear? Is there anything you transferred to this more recent loss?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there is, and that was my faith.
Yes, come on, let's talk about it. Your
Yeah, that
faith.
was my faith actually, because I never get the most dramatic day of my life. My take on that, the loss of my first wife is, the next 15 minutes of this life is not guaranteed.
No, sir. No, sir. Not at all.
Because I saw someone actually transition in 15 minutes after we were laying down and taking that nap that day. So in translating that to what is taking place with the pandemic, which was also pretty much a sudden thing, we knew it was coming. We had a little bit of warning, but once things shut down, I just basically relied on my faith. And I go, hey, listen, Lord, you know what's needed. Everything's in your hands. You're in control. And so that's where I went with that. And you know what? A similar thing happened to me after I actually prayed on that. A similar thing happened, and that is a calmness that came over me. And basically, the message I got out of that, you know what? You just relax, remain calm. I've got this. And that's what came over to me after the day that my first wife passed, and I'm looking at her there, and she's there deceased, and like a spirit spoke to me and go, hey, Tony, I got her. You can move on with the rest of your journey. And that's pretty much the way I took the pandemic, Very similar is that I just gave it to him, and moved on and just waited for the results. And here we are today. So
yeah, there's definitely, I understand and appreciate effective in how you used your faith to overcome probably the most challenging thing you might ever face in life.
Yes.
The death of a spouse.
Because I definitely want to go before this next wife. I want to be the one to go first.
No, I understand. And I appreciate that too. In the recovery rooms, and in closing, in the recovery rooms, we focus on the biopsychosocial components in recovery. We look at people's medical health, their emotional health, and their spiritual health. And then some therapists kind of stay away from the spiritual stuff in the clinical practice. But one thing I know for sure, that those people who have a good, strong spiritual foundation and a strong and confident faith perspective do much better in recovery. Outcomes are tremendously and remarkably better.
And you know that because this is what you do.
Exactly. But what we know is that has to be in place before the tragedy, before the loss, before the recovery effort. That foundation has to be there, because as I tell folks, especially my A and NA folks, you might be walking down the street and have an urge to use, and every technique, strategy, and coping mechanism that you've been taught in this program is not available to you. The only thing that you can use to overcome this tempting moment is a prayer.
Yes, indeed.
And now, if you haven't used that in a while, that may not even be available when you need it. So I'm so glad you talked about faith and spirituality and how you've used that not only in your loss, but also in your adversities during this business season. Man, this has been powerful. I've benefited from it, Brother Tony.
But so have I.
Yeah. And we would possibly like to have you on again, maybe under a different heading. I can think about 3 topics we can go in. But Brother Tony Swaggerty of Swaggerty Realty Group, can you tell us where people can reach you? How can people find you?
They can find me at TonySwaggerty.com.
Okay, TonySwaggerty.com. Listen to this. Before I close, how many clients do you have in your practice right now?
Clients?
Yes. How many clients does your practice have active right now?
That we're servicing right now?
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Our brokerage right now is servicing, I believe, number-wise, about 25 clients right now.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of business activity.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that compare to the pre-pandemic? Has that been kind of your baseline number, or?
Yeah, we're actually back to where we were at before pre-pandemic. And those numbers have really picked up over the past few months. And as I mentioned, things are actually moving right now.
Hey, listen, we have 5 minutes. I'm getting some cues from my executive producer there, Miss Travers. Listen, give some hope. For someone who believes this pandemic has shut them down and they don't need to plan and prepare for the future, that this isn't a season to plant some seeds and to move forward with the dreams, one dream being home ownership. What could you say to them to motivate them? Is there any words of encouragement you can share to a new home buyer?
Absolutely. Just pull up your bootstraps. In other words, should I say, put your helmet on.
Yeah.
Get off the bench and get in the game.
Off your bench and get in the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no, if you have job stability, I say now is no better time, than to seek homeownership. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. Just go for it.
Right. So that's why we have to encourage our young adults and our
no question. We must.
We have to prepare them so that they have a meaningful income and profession that supports home ownership.
Absolutely.
Right? Because there's some steps that have to precede application. You have to be approved.
Yes.
You have to qualify.
You have to qualify.
So we want to get our young folks committed and focused on applying themselves so that when it's time to apply for these rights and privileges in life, right?
You're prepared.
You're prepared.
Yes.
Brother Tony, obviously you've prepared yourself over 30 years to do tremendous work. The value you bring is not just helping people get through the process, but the connection and the relational piece. That has even probably more value because that's long-standing. What I'm hearing you say is your clients maintain the relationship with you even after they've signed and moved into the home. So everyone, I encourage you, reach out to Brother Tony. Yeah, you heard his contact information. I want you to reach out to him, ask questions. Of course, he's always accepting new clients. And he's convinced me that you can trust him to care for your housing needs. Now, behavioral health folks, we know for certain that stable housing is what we call one of these stability factors. It's hard to have your mind right if you don't have stable housing.
That is correct.
If I don't have a place to live, I can't talk about too much of other things because I'm just surviving now, looking for my next destination to lay my head down. And so we have to understand the value and the pride that goes into home ownership, and it's yours. It can't be taken away.
That's right.
The landlord can't evict you or move you out and close the facility or rehab it. And
great points. Great points.
Stability factor. And so we encourage everyone in the audience, if you don't have a plan, if you're not currently a homeowner, consult with someone, a mortgage broker or real estate agent, to start talking about and thinking through the process so you can get there. The good news is you can do it.
You can do it.
There's some steps, but there's no reason why everyone who's watching this and their offspring cannot become at some point a home buyer. Tony, we appreciate you, man. Much love.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Thank you for your time. And now you're definitely a part of the Prestige family forever.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Okay. And for the audience, if you want to learn more about Prestige and what we do, you can contact us at prestigecommunityresources.com. And on the website, you'll see some other podcasts. This is probably podcast number 30 something, and .org, that is, prestigecommunityservices.org. I'm sorry. And you'll find on the website all kinds of services, to food services, to clinical services, to housing services. Prestige now has some housing, short-term housing units for men and for women. And you know, that same stuff in Bristol, Columbia, trying to find reasonable housing is a real challenge. So we invite you to look at Prestige, consult with us, let us be your treatment provider of choice. And until next time, be well, be safe. See you in the next podcast. Peace.
See you in the next one.